Hey guys. So, I recently made a video detailing my thoughts on High Guard, and I honestly had a ton of fun making it. And a couple days ago, I got the itch again to make another video yapping about a video game. And as I was trying to figure out what to talk about, and I was just throwing out different names in my head, one name just kept coming back to me over and over again. And if you read the title of this video, you know what I'm referring to. So, Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, or KOTOR for short, was published in 2003 by BioWare. And if you know anything about BioWare, you know they have made some incredible RPGs. KOTOR was such a pillar of my childhood, I can't even count the amount of playthroughs that I have in that game, and I still find myself coming back to it to this day. And it wasn't just big in my life, it was big in my siblings' lives too. Literally, my older sister, when she would babysit us, would make us bow down to the Xbox disc of KOTOR.
What?
And no, I'm not making that up. But I believe that KOTOR is the absolute gold standard of RPGs, and I think it holds up really well in the big 2026. So let's talk about the game. The dialogue holds up incredibly well. It was well written in 2003, and it is still very well written and holds up. Now, this game does not have a voiced protagonist. And a little side tangent, I love unvoiced protagonists. I think it allows you to immerse yourself in a character far more than a voiced protagonist does. When you play a game like KOTOR and you're reading through the dialogue options, you read that in your own voice. You put little different inflections that you yourself are creating. So those lines are really yours. Everybody reads those lines just a little bit differently, and so every single one of them is unique to each playthrough. But when you play a game like Mass Effect, who has a voiced protagonist, and honestly, you don't even really necessarily see the different options that you have, so you're not exactly sure what your character is going to say. And in fact, when you do select your option, you're actually just listening to your character. You aren't the one actually reading it, you're just listening to Commander Shepard talk. But don't get me wrong, I love Mass Effect. I think those games are incredible, and they push the RPG genre forward. But for me, I love unvoiced protagonists. Back to the dialogue, you have so many options when it comes to approaching each conversation, and companions will even interrupt you in the middle of a conversation or just in the gameplay to comment on whether they liked or disliked something you did or said. I think that's incredible. And speaking of companions, every companion in this game is so good. Each have their own personalities, each have their own things that they like and dislike, and they'll let you know if they don't like something. And the really cool thing about how this game handles companions is that the decisions that you make and the decisions you make with those companions will actually have an effect at the end of the game. I don't want to get too far into that because I want to avoid spoilers in this video, and I really think if you haven't played this game that you should go out and play it because it is incredible. Let's talk about the big one, the story. Every good RPG needs an excellent story, and KOTOR 100% delivers on that. The story puts you dead center in a massive conflict that has huge ramifications for the galaxy of Star Wars. The story feels like it has actual consequences and stakes. You feel the pressure as you are going through this story of having this giant enemy that seems so much more powerful than you following you the entire game, and you really feel that, and I think it's just so well executed. The game also has an incredible twist. Again, I'm not going to spoil that for you, but I think it handles it really well, especially for the time. My little kid brain was blown away by this twist. Now, it may not sound like a lot, but I think it is handled very well. Another thing is, the world building in this game is top notch. You truly feel like you are in the Star Wars universe. You feel like you're walking around in Kashyyyk, or you're walking around in Dantooine, or any of the other amazing locations. It just feels so alive. There are so many people walking around, you can talk to most of them. Some of them just have little generic lines. But especially for 2003, it feels so vibrant, so alive, and it's very convincing. Okay, let's talk about the aspect that has probably aged the worst in this game, and that is the gameplay. The game came out in 2003, and it definitely shows its age in some of the areas of the gameplay. The combat is pretty clunky, and honestly, it can just sometimes break, and it just completely breaks the whole game. In my most recent playthrough, which was last year, There were plenty of times where the combat would just break and the game would completely break, and I would just have to restart the game. The accessibility options that we are so accustomed to in 2026, of course, are just not there. And the game just generally does not run well. At high FPS, it has a lot of problems. It can cause, what in my experience, when you had a high FPS, you had to limit it, or after every combat, your character would just completely freeze and you couldn't move until you cap that FPS. Now, all of these issues are to be expected of a game that came out in 2003, but I can definitely understand how somebody that never grew up with the game, that has never played it, and doesn't have that nostalgia to look back to kind of cover up some of those rougher areas, I can see how that can be a pretty tough barrier to entry. However, despite those flaws, I think KOTOR still has a ton to offer, and if you're a fan of RPGs or of the Star Wars universe, you are totally missing out if you don't give this game a try. Now, of course, a lot of this clunkiness could be solved by a remake, and a remake was announced in September of 2021, but we have basically heard nothing about it since then. I don't know what is going on with that game. It was announced almost 5 years ago, and I haven't heard a single thing. The only thing I know is it switched studios, I think at least once. It's from the outside, it seems like the development has completely halted. I'm not sure if that game is ever going to come out. I hope it does, but it's looking a little bleak. Even if we don't get that remake, I still think KOTOR, you should definitely still give it a try. Anyway, I love KOTOR, and I think it still has a ton to offer in the big 2026. And I would wholeheartedly suggest it to anyone. And I hope we get that remake to kind of update some of the gameplay side to make it much more modern. But even in its original state, I still think that KOTOR is a masterpiece, and you should absolutely give it a try. Thanks guys for watching. If you want to look at more videos from me, you can check them out here. If you like the video, please like, it does help a lot. And if you want to stay tuned for what I have coming, you can go ahead and hit the subscribe button. That also helps a ton. But just you guys being here means a lot to me. I really appreciate you guys. You guys have a good one. Talk to you later.